Today we are going to discuss about the data provider functionality which is available in TestNG. So before running the data provider, I just want to walk through the last examples that we had done on TestNG and how was our how was our approach to test the test cases using the test method at the test annotation, and how it can be modified to help us do the testing in a better way. So let's look at this calculator example. We have already seen the calculator example. It had a calculator functionality which is called a calculator app. Okay, in calculator app we had the way to basically, we have written four methods, that is add method, subtract, multiply and division. To test them with the help of TestNG, we have created a TestNG class that's called calculator app test. So in that we have written @test, test calculator subtraction and test calculator division. Similarly, I'm going to create one more class. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more class in the same location. So I'm going to create a new Java class, and let's call this class calculator test data driven. In this class, I'm going to test the same calculator add method. So first of all, I need to have @test annotation, and always remember to import the test @test annotation from org.testng.annotations. Once it is imported, we can write our code public void test add. Done. So within this, I'm going to create a calculator object. So I need to import, and calculator app I need to import. Fine. CLC app equal to new calculator app. Once that is done, so we have the calculator app object. The next thing is, I need to have two values, int x equal to 10, int y equals to 20, int expected sum equals to 30. These are the three data which we give as an input to the test, because we know if we are 10 and 20 we should have 30, but that is some value which we are expecting. We are yet to check the functionality that this calculator app is having. So now we are going to call the calculator app dot the add method, and we're passing x and y values. So once this add method is executed with the value of x and y, the add method, it actually returns an integer value. So if you put your mouse on that, you can see it returns an integer value. So we can have that integer value saved in the actual sum parameter. Fine. Now this is the property, this is the value which we are actually getting when we are calling the app functionality. Okay, the add functionality of calculator app. Now we need to check if both these data are equal or not. To do that, we can use assert equals. Okay, first the expected data was the actual sum, then the expected sum, and if both are not equal, then we can say addition is not working. That's done. Okay, we have imported the assert from a different repository. That's the reason it is showing some error, because that is deprecated. So if you want to know from where this assert is basically imported, we can go to the top and see it is imported from junit.framework.assert, but we need to import it from org.testng, right? So let's delete this line and let's go back and see from where we can import it. So there are multiple options available. We must focus on the org.testng part. So that is imported. Now we are calling the assert equals. There is no error available. That's fine. So let's run this test case and see how it is being tested, and we'll see what are the problems and what is the need of a data provider. To run this, I have added the TestNG plugin to my project. So right click, go to run as a TestNG test. So after running it, we'll see that the test case has passed properly. Okay, there is no error. In this you can see, yeah, the test has successfully run. If there is some error, suppose I'm adding 10 and 20 and I'm expecting 30, but there is some mistake in the add functionality. The add functionality is returning the value with some extra data. There is some error. So it is going to return x plus y plus 19, but that is wrong. Addition doesn't happen that way. So we are going to check this functionality. After testing it, it should fail and it should tell us what went wrong. Okay. what was the expected data and what is the actual data which is coming. It says addition functionality, addition is not working, expected data was 30 but found was 49. So we go back and fixed our code and we have made it perfect. Now the code should pass. Okay, anyways, now the problem is, suppose I want to test with two different data which are like some other data. Suppose I want to add 0 and 0. So I'm going to expect a 0. So what I need to do, I need to come back to my code, I need to change this data, then I need to again check with the actual value. So this needs compilation because there is a change in the Java source code. Let's run this code. Now the test case has passed, and suppose I want to test some negative data, 10 minus 3, 4. So if you add these two data, it's going to be 10 minus 4, that is 6. So let's run this code. Again it has passed. Now the thing is that every time I'm providing a set of data, I'm trying to change the class, I'm trying to change the Java code, and I need to change the logic. Okay, not the logic, I need to change the code, I need to compile it, and again I need to run it. But what will happen, suppose I have these three data dynamically passed. I have these three data dynamically passed. Sometimes the x value is 10, y value is 20. After some time the x value is changed, y value is changed, and accordingly the expected value is changing. So basically we are picking this data from some external file which is not a Java file. So in TestNG we can do that with the help of data provider. So how this data provider works, let's see. When I have a data provider, I will have the values passed directly into the method int x, y and int expected. So if I add the x and y values, I can have an actual value and I can check the value, check the data like this functionality if it is working properly or not. But how this data will come here, we don't have any logic written so that this data will come here. For that reason, we have a data provider concept in TestNG, and we need to give that over here. Just after test, we need to write data provider equals to name of the data provider, like addition test data provider. Okay, so this is called addition test data provider. So this name, what does this string mean? That means there is a separate method, or there is a separate class, separate functionality which actually generates these three dynamic data and sends to this test method for testing purpose. Okay, so let's have another class, another method, public void generate test data. And this test data, generate test data method, it should have another annotation called data provider, and we should give a name to it. Name equals to this value. So whenever a test case is executed, it checks that it has some data x, y and z or expected data, and these data are integer, integer and integer data. It means that this data needs to be available from a data provider. Then it will check the data provider that it is using. It is using the addition test data provider. It will search for all the data provider it has with the name addition data provider, and it will find one of them. So once this addition data provider is available, it will take the data, generate the data from here and use them one by one. So we'll have a set of data. So how can we have a set of data? We can have a set of data as an array. So let's call it an integer array. Okay, test data set 1 equal to new int array, and I can pass the values over 1 and 23. The expected data is 24. Okay, so for example 3 and 30 and 23, that is going to be 53. So this is one set of data. I can have similarly 3 sets of data, or as many sets are there, 1. So now I have 3 sets of data. Let's change with different scenarios, 0, 0 and 0. Similarly, it can be -1, -4, -5. Let's have some more scenarios to test. This is 4 and this is 5. Suppose I want to add a negative value, -20, with a positive value, that is 40, and I'm expecting the result to be 20. Similarly, suppose I want to add 0 to any value, say for example 9, and I'm expecting the same value. And I can have a 0 to add to any negative value, okay, and I'm expecting the same value. So these are the different scenarios basically which I can test to this add functionality. If the add functionality passes all these test data, then we can say, okay, my add functionality is working perfectly fine. Now the main challenge is TestNG has come to execute this test add method. Now it has found that it needs a data provider, and the data provider needs to pass 3 integer data. Now we have come to the data provider with the same name, and it has the same data structure, sets 3 sets of data. So 30 will be assigned to x, 23 will be assigned to y, and the expected sum is going to hold 53. Okay, so this is how the test data is prepared. Once I have prepared the test data, now the main challenge is I need to pass this data to this test case. Okay, to pass this test data to these 3 variables, formal parameters, and run our test case. To do that, I can return this data, all this data at a time. Okay, so if you look at this, each of these data is basically an integer array of size 3, right? So all these data are integer array of size 3. And how many times I'm passing this 3 size integer array? Once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, and 6 times. So I'm basically passing an array of, so I'm passing 6 times this integer array. Copy, paste. So 6 data is passed. If I want to group them together, now this is one data, this is again another data, again another data. So all these data types are same, integer array type. So the type becomes integer array type. So I'm basically having an integer array type how many times?
6 times.
Perfect, we are having it 6 times. So what we can have a 2-dimensional integer array, that's called integer array. This is going to be 6 times, and each time, so each 6 times, now that means I'm having integer array 6 times, that means I'm having integer array data for index 0. Okay, similarly integer array data for index 1, for index 2, and we'll have for 3 index, 4 index, 5 index. So these are the 6 data which I will be passing, and each time I'm going to pass another integer array. So how it happens? This integer array is of 3 data. So integer array 0, it contains an integer array 3 data, 3 integer data, right? So let's go back. This is the first integer array data. I need to test with this. Okay, so the data type is integer array type. Okay, so I need to pass these 3 data at a time. Okay, and what has happened, I have these sets of data multiple times. Okay, multiple times these set of data. Okay, multiple times. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass this 2-dimensional array to the person who actually needs this data provider. So I'll have a 2-dimensional array of data, and it's an integer data. So the data is containing 3 data, the second dimension is containing 3 data, and I'm going to call it 6 times. So I'll have an integer array of index 0 with data 1, not 1, it will start with 0. Similarly, integer array at index 0, I'll have data 1, and at integer array 0, I'll have data 2. So now this data will be, it will be containing 30, this will be containing 23, and this will be containing 53. And this data is going to repeat 6 times. So this is going to be, so I'm having this data being called 0 for 1, and similarly, are you getting me? 2, 2.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now you understood this is the first time when I'm going to call and pass these 3 data. and the data is going to be an array of data 0, 1, 2 and 0, 1, 2 again 0, 1, 2. Similarly, I am going to call this integer array 3 more times, okay, and this time it is going to, okay, the first time it is containing 30, 23 and 53, second time it is going to contain 0, 0, 0, so this data is going to change from 0, 0 and 0, again -1, -4 and -5, -1, -4 and -5, and it will go on. So I'm not writing all the data so you can understand, okay. Similarly, 6 times integer array of size 3 data is going to be generated and sent back to the caller which needs these data. Fine, this is how the data provider is created. Now the thing is that I have created all these data sets. I need to put them into a final integer two-dimensional array that's called some value I can call like return data set. It's going to have an integer two-dimensional array. It's going to have six integer arrays, and each time it's going to have 3 data, okay. 6 times it's going to be called and it's going to have 3 data at a time. So this return data set is created and I'm going to keep all these data together. So all this data I need to put into this return data set. So return data set at index 0 is containing test data set 1. It's indirectly another integer array, okay. Similarly, I'll have 6 locations. So let's give them a name 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and this is going to be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this two-dimensional array at 0th index is going to contain an array of 3 data 30, 23 and 53. This data, let's copy. So for reference I am commenting over here, and here I am going to contain 0, 0 and 0. Similarly, at the last index I am going to contain 0, comma, minus 33, 444, and I am going to minus 33, 444. Okay, so all these data are going to be passed into this two-dimensional array. Now the work of data provider is to return all these data at a time. All these data are going to be returned at a time. But data provider is going to take one set of data and call our test case once. Once it is done, then it will come to the second set of data and it will again pass to our data set. So let's remove this comment and fine. So this set of data are going to be returned over here. So how to return that? We need to have a return data set. But this return data set, it means that we are returning a two-dimensional array. So we should have the return type defined. We don't have a return type. It's going to be not going to be void. It's going to be an object two-dimensional array. Okay. Because sometimes we might want to return an integer array and sometimes we might need an integer string and something else. So it's better to have an object array and return any type of data we want. So this is the specification that TestNG wants. Okay, so once we are done with that, once we give this specification and once we return the data, it's the work of TestNG to get a set of data from data provider and pass it to the test case, and the test case should run properly. Okay. Now we're seeing some error. Okay. It cannot convert to an object array, two-dimensional array, from an integer two-dimensional array. Okay, let's call it new object two-dimensional array and pass this set of data. No, it's not going to work. This object two-dimensional array is going to contain at 0th index again a two-dimensional array. That's a problem. So okay, let's not make it complex. So as per the specification of data provider, it expects the as per the specification of TestNG, it expects the data provider to return an object two-dimensional array. So we need to have an object two-dimensional array. We cannot return an integer array. So let's convert this thing, integer array, what we are returning, that's into a two-dimensional object array, and let's make it two-dimensional object array. Once it is set, we can set return data set at 0 is an object array. So it needs to be an object array. We can have any value. Okay, let's call it object. Copy this and let's paste it over here. Fine. Great. So now I don't have any integer arrays, but these data are integer. I have converted them into object array and I have returned that. So let's go ahead and run this test case, and we don't need this over here. We can directly return data set. We can use the return data set and it's going to work. So now we have done this. So let's run this code. Now what is going to happen? This object data set, like return data set, is an object two-dimensional array. It's containing 6 set of data, and each set of data is containing 3 values. These 3 values are basically the method parameters that we have over here. The first value is going to be copied into the x parameter, the second value is copied into the y parameter, and third value to the expected sum. So by this, when we run this test case, this test method is going to be run 6 times and we should get 6 results for that. So all these tests have passed or failed, or some of them have passed, some of them have failed. We are going to look at that and we are going to understand why it happened. So now it has run 6 test cases. You can see 6 times it has run, and every time when you look, all of them have passed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So whenever it has run a test case, it says what is the set of data it is running it with. 30, 23 and 53, 0, 0, 0 it has passed, minus 1, minus 4, minus 5 passed. So with all this set of data it has passed. Let's do one more thing. Let's look at this result or the report that TestNG has generated. We need to refresh the project and then we can go to test output and we can open this index.html. Okay, this is the result that we have got now. So if you look at these, you can see there are 6 methods and all of them have passed. Click on show, it will show us the details. Okay, now this is the detailed view. So every time it is calling the same test add method, but it is passing some different set of data and all of them have passed. There is no failure. So if you want to see how basically it has passed the data, we can again see over here how much time each of them took and when they were called. So we have understood like this concept of creating a data set and passing them into the test method. So if you want to look at the report or output, there is no output, no failure. If we give, in case we have given a wrong data set, okay, suppose I have created another data, test data of 6 and test data 7, and this is going to contain some wrong data. So let's call it 7 times and test data set of 7, and suppose I'm giving a wrong data set 1, 2, and I'm expecting it to be 4. So it is expecting data output as 4, but the result is coming as 3. So that is going to fail our test case. But you can see all the tests will pass, only one case will fail. Okay, now we need to refresh this report. I think the test is complete. One of them has failed. So let's look at what has gone wrong. So you can see out of 7 methods, 1 has failed and 6 have passed. So this is the failure method. These are the methods which have actually passed. So if you look at these, you can understand these are the data with which it has passed, and this is the data with which it has failed. So it says addition is not working expected as expected, or not working, and it is expecting the data to be 4, but it found the actual data to be 3. Then we need to debug the application. If there is some mistake in the application, we'll understand that. So this is something which we are going to apply to our Selenium based test cases, in which we'll have a login scenario. We are going to pass 2 sets of data. The first set of data is going to contain the valid set, proper username, valid password, and we are expecting it to pass and look. We are expecting it to navigate to the welcome page or some page which is coming after the login successful. On the second set of data is going to contain a wrong set of username and password, and we should be like waiting in the same page. So we are going to see the same thing, how it used to work, in the next part.